Welcome to another episode of Extraterrestrial Mysteries, your guide to the secrets of the cosmos and the unknown phenomena that continue to challenge what we think we know. Tonight, we delve into one of the most widely reported and hotly debated UFO incidents in modern history, an event that still stirs controversy and fascination to this day. This is the story of the Phoenix Lights, a night when thousands of people looked to the sky and saw something they could not explain. It was March 13th, 1997. The evening sky over the southwestern United States would become the canvas for an extraordinary and unearthly display. It began quietly, innocently enough, but over the course of 3 hours, what transpired would leave an indelible mark on UFO history. A series of lights in the shape of a massive V was seen moving silently, steadily over a stretch of nearly 300 miles, from Nevada, across Phoenix, and down to the outskirts of Tucson. This sighting was witnessed by thousands, and to this day, there are questions that linger. Was it a military exercise gone wrong? Or was it something much more? A visitation from a civilization not of this earth? The Phoenix Lights was not just a sighting. It became a pivotal moment that shook a city and set the stage for one of the most compelling cases of extraterrestrial speculation in our time. Let's begin with what happened that night, as told by those who lived it. The Phoenix Lights incident began around 7:30 p.m. on the evening of March 13th, 1997. For many, it was an ordinary evening, a time when families gathered for dinner, children finished their homework, and the sun set over the Arizona desert, casting long shadows across the arid landscape. The air was calm, and for a moment, nothing seemed out of the ordinary. But then, a strange series of lights appeared over the small town of Henderson, Nevada, just across the Arizona border. Witnesses described these lights as bright, yellowish orbs, moving together in a perfect V-shaped formation. Each light was evenly spaced from the next, creating a symmetrical pattern in the sky that immediately drew attention. This wasn't the typical twinkle of stars or the flashing of an airplane. No, this was something entirely different. From there, the phenomenon moved southward, tracing a path across the skies of Arizona. The number of witnesses grew rapidly as the lights approached the city of Phoenix, the state's bustling capital. At first, people were confused. Some speculated it might be a group of helicopters or military aircraft. But as the lights grew closer, the confusion turned into awe, and for some, fear. By the time the lights reached Phoenix, they were more than just a distant spectacle. Residents described them as being part of an enormous object, so large that it blocked out the stars as it passed overhead. The craft moved slowly and silently, as if floating effortlessly through the sky. Many claimed that it was so close they could have thrown a rock at it, and yet there wasn't a single sound. No engines, no wind, just an eerie, oppressive silence. For the next several hours, reports flooded in from across Arizona, as people in towns and cities along the object's path witnessed the same incredible sight. From Prescott to Phoenix and beyond to Tucson, the lights mesmerized and terrified all who saw them. But just as quickly as the object appeared, it was gone. By 10:30 p.m., the sky was dark again, and the strange V-shaped formation had disappeared into the night. What exactly had thousands of people seen that night? Was it a visitor from another world, or was there a more earthly explanation for this bizarre event? The question still lingers to this day, and as we explore further, we'll find that the answer is anything but clear. And the sheer volume of eyewitnesses who came forward after the Phoenix Lights incident is staggering. It wasn't just a handful of people who claimed to have seen something strange in the sky. It was thousands. These witnesses spanned a vast geographic area, from Nevada to the southern edge of Arizona. Their backgrounds were equally diverse. They were families, students, military personnel, police officers, pilots, and even politicians. Despite their differences, many of their descriptions of the event were remarkably consistent. Let's start with one of the most notable witnesses, former Arizona Governor Fife Symington. Symington was no stranger to the military. He had served in the U.S. Air Force, where he had seen all kinds of aircraft, both classified and unclassified. But on the night of March 13th, Symington encountered something that he couldn't explain. He saw a massive, V-shaped craft moving silently through the sky. It was unlike anything he had ever witnessed during his military service. Symington later described the object as otherworldly, and admitted that it did not resemble any known aircraft. His account, though controversial, added a significant layer of credibility to the event, as it came from a figure of authority and respect. Then there were the everyday people. Take, for example, a family in Phoenix that was out stargazing when they spotted the lights. They initially thought it might be a group of planes flying in formation, but as the lights approached, they realized this was no ordinary aircraft. The father described the object as so large that it spanned the entire horizon. His children, wide-eyed, asked what it was, but he had no answer. They stood there, rooted to the spot, unable to look away, until the object passed overhead and disappeared into the night. One pilot, who was flying a private aircraft that evening, also reported seeing the lights. He was cruising at an altitude of 17,000 feet when he spotted the V-shaped formation below him. The pilot radioed in to air traffic control, but they reported no known aircraft in the area. From his vantage point, the pilot could clearly see that the object was massive, far larger than any commercial or military aircraft he had ever flown. It moved silently and slowly, as if defying the laws of aerodynamics. To this day, he remains convinced that what he saw was not of this world. Perhaps most chilling were the reports from individuals who claimed the object passed so close to the ground that they could make out its shape in detail. One man in Prescott Valley recounted how he and his neighbors stood in their front yard, watching as the craft glided directly overhead. He described it as being triangular, with a dark, metallic surface. The lights were embedded within the object, not simply attached to it, and they emitted a soft, almost ethereal glow. As the object moved away, it left the witnesses in a stunned silence. The consistency of these descriptions, silent, slow-moving, massive, and V-shaped, makes the Phoenix Lights incident one of the most compelling UFO sightings in history. These were not just fleeting glimpses or blurry distant lights. These were direct encounters with something that for many defied all explanation. When a UFO sighting of this magnitude occurs, it doesn't take long for officials to offer an explanation, and the Phoenix Lights incident was no different. In the days that followed, the U.S. Air Force stepped forward with their account of what had happened. According to military officials, the lights seen over Phoenix that night were the result of a training exercise involving A-10 Warthog aircraft. They claimed that the lights were flares dropped from the planes as part of Operation Snowbird, a routine military exercise conducted in the area. The military's explanation centered around the idea that these flares, dropped over the Barry Goldwater Range southwest of Phoenix, accounted for the stationary lights seen in the sky. Flares, they argued, could remain aloft for extended periods, and could give the illusion of being a large object when viewed from a distance. However, this explanation didn't sit well with many of the witnesses. For one, the lights that people described did not behave like flares. Flares typically fall in a downward trajectory and flicker out as they burn up in the atmosphere. But the lights seen over Phoenix maintained a steady formation for extended periods. Furthermore, flares are anything but silent. They emit a loud hissing noise as they fall, and yet the witnesses described the lights as completely silent. Governor Fife Symington himself publicly refuted the military's explanation, stating that what he saw did not resemble flares in any way. He went so far as to suggest that the Air Force was covering up something more significant, though he stopped short of speculating what that might be. Many residents also pointed out that the lights were seen moving in a distinct V-shaped formation for over 300 miles, far beyond the range of any flare drop zone. And while some of the lights may have been flares, this didn't account for the massive craft that witnesses described passing directly over their heads. How could a flare create the impression of a solid object so large it blocked out the stars? The skepticism wasn't limited to just eyewitnesses either. UFO researchers and investigators took up the case, pointing out that the military's explanation had holes in it. While the Air Force maintained that flares were responsible, no official explanation was ever provided for the earlier sightings of the V-shaped craft seen flying over Arizona before the flares were allegedly dropped. To this day, many who witnessed the Phoenix lights remain unconvinced by the official explanation. For them, the event represents a cover-up, an attempt by the government to dismiss and downplay what they saw with their own eyes. So if the Phoenix lights weren't just flares from a military exercise, what were they? Theories abound, ranging from the mundane to the fantastic, but two stand out as the most popular among those who believe the event was more than just a misidentified military exercise. The first theory is, of course, that the lights were part of an extraterrestrial spacecraft. This theory is supported by the sheer number of witnesses who describe seeing a massive, solid craft moving silently over their heads. For many, the Phoenix lights represent definitive proof that we are not alone in the universe, that on that night, the inhabitants of Earth were visited by beings from another world. Proponents of the extraterrestrial theory point to the lack of sound and the slow, deliberate movement of the object as evidence that it was not a human-made craft. They argue that if it was some kind of classified military aircraft, it would have made noise and moved much faster than the object seen over Phoenix. Moreover, the fact that the object was seen over such a large area and by so many people lends credibility to the idea that this was not just a localized incident. If the Phoenix lights were indeed an alien craft, it would represent one of the most significant UFO sightings in history. The second major theory is that the lights were part of a top-secret military project, something far more advanced than the Air Force was willing to admit. This theory suggests that the object seen over Phoenix was a classified experimental aircraft, perhaps using cutting-edge technology that allowed it to move silently and defy conventional flight characteristics. Supporters of this theory point to the fact that the U.S. government has a long history of developing secret aircraft, many of which were mistaken for UFOs during their testing phases. Could the Phoenix lights have been part of one such project? Some believe it's possible, especially given the proximity of the sighting to several military installations in the area. Still, even this theory leaves unanswered questions. Why would the military test such an advanced craft over a populated area, where thousands of people could see it? And why hasn't the government come forward with more information about what was in the sky that night? The Phoenix lights remain a mystery, and until more information comes to light, both the extraterrestrial and military explanations are likely to persist in the public consciousness. The Phoenix Lights incident stands as one of the most intriguing and well-documented UFO sightings in history. It was a moment when thousands of people across Arizona looked up and saw something they could not explain. For some, it was a life-changing event that convinced them we are not alone in the universe. For others, it was a reminder that our skies hold more secrets than we might ever fully understand. Was it an alien spacecraft visiting our world? A classified military project? Or simply a series of misidentified flares and lights? The answer remains elusive, but one thing is certain. The Phoenix lights have earned their place in the annals of UFO lore, a shining example of the mysteries that lie just beyond our reach. Thank you for joining us on this journey into the unknown. Be sure to tune in next time as we continue to explore the mysteries of the cosmos and the strange phenomena that defy explanation. Until then, keep looking up. You never know what you might see.